What's the difference between innovation and going digital, improving your tech stack, as you said, during our Skype call?
That sounds like a Microsoft question.
But I think you have more knowledge than I do.
I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things for me where there's a lot of this talk about going digital, and there are a lot of legacy tech stacks that need to be changed. When I listen to your talk, you talk about cloud and all this stuff, and I look and I go, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's Jurassic. Like, cloud is, to me, it's taken as a given. But I forget that it's not, right? So I come from the startup world where there are certain technologies you just need to have to be not just competitive, to exist. But that is very different to innovation.
Look, I think rather than define innovation or going digital, and going digital for me is an outcome, right? It's an outcome. I think it's important to turn around and saying, to put the customer at the center of your journey. And then you work through from there. I think you defined that just now very nicely in your presentation, Jordan, when you talked about what innovation really means. And I don't think there's a standard definition, because I think it depends from company to company, the situation, the context, and the circumstances in which you're operating. Piyush Gupta, who's the CEO of DBS Bank in Singapore, and he's widely regarded for transforming DBS. And now has gotten a lot of acclaim globally, as a fintech bank and so on and so forth. And he did something really interesting. When I spoke to him, he says, all I knew is the financial services industry was getting disrupted, and all I knew is I needed to be at the heart of the customer journey. He says, that's all I knew. I needed to be where my customer was, and then they worked backwards from there. That's what he did. And so when you think about innovation in his case, to your point, he had the accelerator, he opened up a bank right in the heart of startup world in Ayer Rajah in Singapore. He paid people money to go try things and fail. He ran the hackathons, but he had the continuity post-hackathons. It wasn't one-off, for example. But his North Star was the customer. I want to be where the customer is, and what would it take for me to be where the customer is? And then all the other things were byproducts. Which technology, what process, what screens, what does engagement look like? Just all those came after that.
I mean, that's the truth, right? The fundamental truth is that everyone from the chairman on down gets fired by the customer simply spending their money elsewhere. And that's the truth. You have to put customer at the heart of your organization. But coming back to this concept of what's digital versus innovation. Innovation, I was just having this conversation with Azim just now. He was asking me this question. When we talk about innovation from a corporate standpoint, the way I like to look at it is we need to go from our current mechanical thinking to one of a biological thinking process. Because when we use this word of adaptability, of resilience, right, and the ability to thrive, not just this year, but this decade, and to be relevant this year and this decade. It's this scenario of saying, it is uncertain, it won't be one or two initiatives where there is no silver bullet, there isn't a magic pill for this, so we need that portfolio of different initiatives. We need to learn, we need to become learning organizations. And when we come back to that biological way of thinking, that sort of Darwinian evolutionary scenario, we look at biological organisms and they mutate. They have tons of different mutations, and the ones that succeed and give that organism a competitive advantage, they reproduce more. And that's how evolution ultimately happens. So when we're talking about innovation for your organization, it's about how do you create this portfolio of little mutations, for want of a better phrase. The ability to adapt and learn from customers, that's it, that's the only opinion that matters. And how do you take that learning to try a bunch of different stuff out with most of it failing? And it not risking too much on any one initiative. Because there's this big fallacy in entrepreneurship which really drives me crazy. When people say, oh, Jordan, you're an entrepreneur, right? Got to take big risks, right? Entrepreneurship, big risks? Absolutely not. This is complete nonsense. This is crazy fallacy that exists. Serially successful entrepreneurs, not serial entrepreneurs, serially successful entrepreneurs understand the importance of what we call the affordable loss principle. This is the concept of saying, in trying to learn X, what can I afford to lose that if it doesn't work out, I'm still in the game? Ultimately, how do I get multiple bites at the apple and not risk everything? Not sell my house, mortgage, sell my second child on this one great idea that I believe in, right? But to treat our ideas suspiciously, like a big pile of guesses, and saying, it is our job to try and kill this idea. If we can't kill it, by definition, it's going to thrive. But how do we not overinvest? And how do we run a process where we're not betting everything on big, right? It's like, the truth of entrepreneurship is we don't take big risks. We just don't. It's stupid to do so.
Okay, this question deals with the present scenario now. We have no money. The ringgit is tanking. The market's bad. So why, in a situation like this, would I spend money on more tech? You know, you're nice to have. So how would you respond to that?
So I think it's a fair question. The scenario of not enough money, ringgit tanking, or some economic situation and so on and so forth is no different in the year 2008. It's probably no different a century ago, right? It's been happening, but yet businesses have been thriving. Businesses have been evolving. Businesses have been innovating, you know, and so on and so forth. So I don't think that's a good enough reason or excuse. Having said that, I think prioritization of what's important for the organization, making sure that there's a clear view of where we want to go, how we want to think about reimagining our business becomes important. Obviously, again, putting the customer at the heart of it. You will need to make trade-offs. And I've seen people become penny-wise, pound-foolish in their decisions with regards to technology. All right? Because they think there's free tech, let me go use free tech to innovate or to run my enterprise. There's no such thing as free technology. Nothing in life is free. You know, there's always a cost to it. It's a question of whether you pay it now or you pay it later. But there is a cost to everything that happens. You know, it could be direct, it could be indirect. So I think it's important to turn around and say, hey, technology is an enabler of a solution. You're trying to solve something. So be clear what you're trying to solve, in good times or bad times. And if you think that will have material impact on your business, then the answer becomes obvious with regards to how you make trade-offs or where you divert money to go buy technology. But right now, more than ever before, it is a necessary evil. There will be prioritizations you need to turn around and do, but it needs to be in the context of your business outcomes and impact you want to drive and what you want to do with the customer.
But do I need to spend so much money? Have you heard of the concept of frugal innovation, and what do you think of that?
What is so much money? If you spend $50 on technology, but there's an alternative that's zero, is $50 expensive? So it really depends. So it's a very broad point that you're raising with regards to when you talk about expensive. It really depends on what you're trying to solve. And if what you're trying to solve can have a material impact on the business, then maybe it's not expensive. To Jordan's question just now, the context I felt you left out in your conversation, in your question just now, which I know was a game, was $1 million. Would I bet on $1 million to get a return of $1 million in 12 months or $1 billion in the next 2 to 3 years? If I run a small business and my revenue is small, chances are $1 million in 12 months could triple my business. I might make the decision to go triple my business because I need to get to a certain scale. So there is a context with regards to how we think. But at the heart of it, obviously, $1 billion in 3 months sounds, on $1 million investment, sounds like a good investment. But it also depends on the circumstance I'm in, the cash flow I have, what I've invested, what are my core competencies, so on and so forth. So bottom line is, technology is an enabler to a solution. We can't be penny-wise, pound-foolish, and we need to know why we want to buy that technology to solve what problem.
I don't think innovation costs money. I don't think it costs huge amounts of money. I think actually the sums that we're talking about to significantly increase your organization's capability to innovate, to make a meaningful difference on your survival rate, on your optionality that you have, on an impact for the future of your business. We're not talking large sums of money, and the truth is, operating in the world of innovation budgets are frugal as hell. right? Real numbers. Look at real numbers, right? We're talking with Jaguar Land Rover, right? Last year, and we went to the board to ask for about 100 million quid over 3 years, right? Put this into context. They spend £6 billion on R&D every year. £6 billion on R&D. We're asking for 100 million over 3 years. 0.01%, right? Seriously, is that too much to ask for some optionality to safeguard your future, to potentially prevent yourself becoming, a manufacturer of metal boxes with wheels? Because that's the truth of their organization. They are staring down the gun barrel of becoming a Foxconn. A Foxconn, some outsourced manufacturer who takes small margins of making metal boxes with wheels for a Google, for an Uber, for someone else. Right? So the scenario there is it's crazy. Now the truth is with Jaguar Land Rover, they have the reality of, China went through some major troubles. Most of its profitability is actually selling Range Rovers in China. The CEO is like, whoa, we've got to rip out a ton of costs from the business. No, we're going to cut the innovation budget. The first budget that gets cut is the fickle innovation budget. To me, this is insane. Because not only are they small, right? It's like the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action in this context. The cost of not doing something guarantees nothing, right? You're guaranteeing nothing by not doing it. Putting a little bit of money towards it gives you chance that you might get it right. And I just don't understand. I genuinely don't understand. It's not large sums of money, but I don't understand the frivolous nature of innovation budgets and why they get cut so quickly and why people don't believe in them and why they don't need to be big. It's not big sums of money.
Yeah, look, I've seen people make decisions based on P&L. So when you put it in context, it's 0.01% or 0.1% is really small. I agree with you. It's like marketing budgets, right? The first thing that gets cut during bad times, you go to your marketing person and you say, cut your marketing dollars. And the guy is already saying, hey, I'm already 3% of your total. Now you're giving me 1%. And what do you want me to do in marketing? Or there's Facebook, it's free. Use Facebook or go online social media, it's free. So the whole concept of engagement and experience gets lost in the context of how we think about cost, because we're looking at it from a P&L standpoint, which is why I always come back to the basics. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to solve? You want to make sure that you're in the heart of the customer, right? You want to make sure that you're heart of the customer. And you must never lose sight, and I think organizations lose sight of that. Innovation for the sake of it makes absolutely no sense. I'm innovating because it's cool to innovate. I have a accelerator and I'm harboring in my organization. Why? What do you want to do? How does that then influence the change in culture, the change in how you innovate, how you're funding and fueling that innovation? Unfortunately or fortunately, you need money to fuel that. But when you think about innovation today and you leave this room and you say, hey, I got to go and innovate, take a step back and ask yourself today, what is your current culture? If you don't have a culture to disrupt, to innovate, to unlearn, to relearn, to make mistakes, to celebrate those mistakes and those learnings, don't jump, because then you're not going to turn around and be able to figure out what that bridge is. So understand where you are today and where you want to go and why you want to do that, and then start to build that bridge. Because Rome was never built in a day.
I think you have to pay for Facebook now if you want to boost your post, right? You guys both have touched on this fail fast. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. And it's not our culture. And could you maybe suggest first few steps? Because it's easy to say this in a context like this, but when you go back, how is this going to be applied in your organization?
And that's why I started with leadership in the age of disruption. What exactly do we have to do? Leadership in the last 20 years and leadership for the next 20 years will be different. It will be different. And people will see through your leadership style, your leadership character. They'll see through whether you're an authentic leader or an unauthentic leader. They will see right through. So we cannot turn around and hide. So how we think about leading going forward becomes very different. In my 19 years, I've had a couple of very interesting roles that I've taken. Without telling you which roles, I've gone into roles where I've had to remove my entire leadership team and rehire half my organization. Half my organization. And instances like that, I look at this as an opportunity to redefine culture. Redefining culture is a journey. It's not easy to go do that. And one of the things I ended up doing was interviewing every single person who joins the organization, regardless whether they reported to me directly or they were 5 levels or 6 or 7 levels down. Nobody would be hired until I meet that person, whether I talk to that person for 15 minutes or half an hour. But the only reason I did that is because I want to make sure that we're hiring the quality of people. They may be subject matter experts, but do they have the aptitude, the attitude to learn, to innovate, to take risks, to try new things, to drive, to be able to critically think about the issues, to be able to turn around and confront some of the challenges that we have? Were they a fit for the culture that we aspire to be? And we did that. So I think when you think about some of the things that leadership can do, first things first, make sure that you and your leadership team are on the same page. The puzzle of 8, understand the physics of the future. First thing is, do you understand what's happening right now? You made the point about cloud is taken for granted. I'm telling you it's not taken for granted, because there's so many people who think about cloud, who have fear of security and privacy and what happens to all of that. Or who turn around and go on the cloud because they think it's cheap, and so I want to do it for... So you're doing it all for the wrong reasons, and you're staying away because of the wrong reasons. You have to start learning these things, because privacy and security is all being taken care of. There are various different ways to do it, and you need to understand it. You cannot... It's no more, let me give it to my CIO. My CIO will do it, and he's the IT guy, and he will figure it out. By the way, that's the other budget that gets cut during a downturn. IT budgets and marketing budgets, 2 first things that gets cut to save the P&L. So I think it's important to take the first step to you as a CEO, understanding it, understanding the physics of the future, making sure you are learning together with your team, making sure you are actually communicating what does that mean and the implications. I did a change management workshop over 2 days with a large company in Singapore. It's a French company based in Singapore. Globally, they have 100% market share. And we did the 2 days. The CEO asked me to help him out. We did a 2-day thing over there. What was interesting was these guys overnight went from 100% market share to 90% market share. They lost 10 points overnight because there was another startup coming out doing the same thing and fractionally cheaper, much faster. And all his teammates, all these guys who worked for him, they were very cool about it. They said, what's the problem? What are we trying to fix? They were telling me, we have 90% market share. What's wrong with you? Why do we need to do anything? At the end of the day, so we had a great workshop, good debates. At the end of the day, the CEO said, we lost 10 points overnight in 1 year. Can you imagine what the 3 years is going to look like if we do nothing? To Jordan's point, the cost of inaction. How do you measure that? So the CEO's vantage point was very different from the other guys, because the other guys were like 90%. And the CEO wants to make change. He's starting to realize what were his, inhibitors in his organization. And then he started that process to knock some sense into his team. And then his team started to understand some of the trends that are happening, some of the challenges, the issues, and how fast people are rising. Because today, computing power or technology is in the hands of the everyday person for a few cents a day. Cheaper than your roti canai here, which is now 1 ringgit something. It's true. So computing power no longer belongs to the big and the mighty and the rich. It is for every single human being. And he can now code through a phone. And he can have access. So some of you could be coding right now an application through your phone. So the understanding the physics of the future becomes the first step. And then I think after that, there's a lot to it, but I think after that, with your leadership team, defining the next steps becomes super important, but making sure that everyone's on the same page on the why. The startup culture and startups and how they think in their mental model is day and night different. Day and night different. They don't have any legacy. Whereas in an organization like that you may have built or led or are leading, you guys have a legacy. And your legacy plays a part with regards to how it could be potentially an enabler of the future, or potentially it could be a roadblock for your future. That is something you need to assess as you go forward as a starting point.
Understanding the physics of the future.